Welcome to the Film Trooper podcast, empowering filmmaking entrepreneurs.
Hey, this is Scott from Film Trooper. We're just going to cut right into it because this is actually part 2 of the episode, What I Learned from My Hiatus from Film Trooper, with my special guest co-hosting this episode with me, Kyle Erwin from the Backyard Space Opera podcast. So without further ado, we'll jump right into it. But, forgot. What you'll see in the next couple of weeks is a handful of podcast episodes being released with Ron Newcomb as the host. He's the indie film coach as well as the founder of the VIP Film Summit. And you can find more information about that at the VIPFilmSummit.com. With all that said, let's get on to the part 2 of what I learned from my hiatus from Film Trooper. This is actually a real case world. I had another Film Trooper follower. He said, okay, I got my film and I've been offered by these guys to do like a 50-50 split on it, where for 2 years they're just going to take my film and put it on all the digital platforms. And I get, whatever, 50%. I go, well, let's really break this down, how this distribution company makes their money. So if they're able to acquire, say they acquire 1,000 titles, because, everybody's making a film now, and you blink your eye, it's like there's easily 1,000 titles you could probably acquire.
Oh, yeah.
As long as it has some sort of genre or something you can do. And you and I start this distribution company, right? Mm-hmm. And we say, we just go out there and introduce ourselves to all these filmmakers based off what we see online, and we say, let us just, for a minimal fee that you give us, maybe like $100 or something like that to get going, we'll make a 50-50 split and we'll get your film onto all these platforms. A lot of these platforms is nothing more than that you can do yourself for free. Like you can get your film onto Amazon for free for a minimal amount of fee. You could probably, you get it onto iTunes and some all these other different, platforms all over the place. So we as distributors, we probably maybe broker a deal with all these different video on demand outlets that is simply just like, we're just going to upload a lot of these files we have to these different companies. And if as the revenue comes in, we get 50% and we give the filmmakers 50%. Now, on average, when you don't have like big stars or notable any really marketing behind your film, you might be lucky to get maybe like $5,000 that you make on your film. That's it, $5,000. But you as a filmmaker might have invested $15,000, $25,000 more, and all you're seeing is $5,000 return. But you're not actually getting $5,000. That's what you made through this deal with this distribution company. And the distribution company will get $2,500 and you get $2,500. But you did all the hard work and you bled to make your film out there, and the most you made with this company was $2,500. Now, if you take $2,500 times 1,000, remember, we are the distribution company and we have 1,000 titles that are all making us about $2,500 each. That's $2.5 million. So that's yeah.
You've convinced me. I think we should make a distribution company.
but the same applies for like a book publishing company.
Which is something you and I have talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So there's even if it's like you make it even attractive, like 70-30, like we'll take 30% and you take, 70%. If the artists are doing all the legwork, or they're bleeding for it, they've taken all the risk to make all this stuff happen. These publishers and distribution companies, if they have a system in place where they're just taking your title and they know how to upload it correctly to all these different sites for an hour, it takes them to do that, and they're just they're going to be able to be profitable, and if one film does really, really well, they're like, oh wow, that title did great, we made 50% off that one, didn't even know that was going to make $1 million,
Yeah.
So with that said, that's why there's a difference between the filmmakers making their living off the fees that are based on the budget of the project versus a distribution company making money off just the backs of artists. And I said the same thing about the extreme action sports industry. You see that a lot. You see like a clothing company will sign or sponsor some skateboard kid for a couple of years until they break their leg and they're worth nothing to them, and then the contract ends and they go to the next kid, you know.
Yep.
So it's like that's kind of how this stuff works. Versus the whole concept is if the film is an advertisement, like how do you sell your action figure? And that's sort of the hiatus I took, was because I decided to go into real estate because of a number of factors. Number one was a year and a half ago, my dad died, and he died at 72. He was like episode 50. He was my guest on, so you can listen to that episode if you wanted to. I forget exactly. Maybe hold on for a second. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Yeah, totally.
I interviewed him for Voices of Veterans one year. There was a special combination of other podcasters who were reaching out to veterans, and he was a Vietnam vet. So I said, I never really sat down and talked to you, So, but it's what came out. Yeah, 51 episode 51. What was fascinating about that is now I have this file that is a candid conversation I just have with my dad, and that my whole family has as like sort of this keepsake, that exists, that wouldn't exist otherwise. Mm-hmm. So from that, my dad's passing. He died at 72. My grandfather died at like 68, and I'm turning 46 this year. And I thought to myself, I might have like 30 plus years, like around 30 years. Like now it's like this timeline is actually like there. And it's like, what could I do when I'm like 72 that nobody cared I was still doing, And a lot of my friends said, you got to get into real estate. Like I have all these friends in California that own their own brokerages that says, get your license. So, and on top of that, when I was working on the TV show Grimm up here a couple years ago, and they shot in Portland. It was on NBC, the show. I was just a day player, and I had like a couple lines with the main actor. But one of the co-stars the guest stars that was working that day, he's been in everything. He's been in like Iron Man and American Sniper and Central Intelligence. Like he's not a famous person, just a character actor that just happens to always play like FBI agents and military people,
I love those guys. They're so much fun to talk to.
Yeah. So we were talking, and he was mentioning also to the lead actor of the show Grimm. He says, "Oh no, my full-time career is a real estate agent down in Los Angeles." And I started thinking that's really interesting. And then there was this whole world of like all the Mexican soap opera TV stars down in Mexico, the Televisa shows. They weren't unionized until just recently, like last year. So a lot of them would just be really famous, but they just were paid chicken scraps as actors for these shows. And then they would have to supplement their income either by taxi drivers or Uber drivers. But a lot of them were real estate agents. And I thought to myself, that is fascinating. And then I met somebody who's well known in the film education space as a legend. And he does this, film education. But everybody's like, a buddy of mine pulled me aside and goes, "Oh man, reality is that dude made so much money in real estate." So it's like you unveiling the secrets. It's the whole Wizard of Oz, like what's really behind the curtain. And I thought to myself, that's really interesting. And this is where the big concept came in, which was like, if film is nothing more than an advertisement for something more expensive, instead of me, making films to push a book that's only worth $20, I go, can I switch out the same principles of the book of $20, but then what if I offered a service that's worth $10,000 or $5,000, whatever it might? And real estate has that ability to do that. So I've been, I had to become an agent, a broker, which I've done, which is why there's a hiatus. I had to learn how to, work towards my license and learn how to become an agent. And I haven't even launched the second phase of it, which is, where does the filmmaking come in? Well, the filmmaking comes in because I'm building this show called Around the Neighborhood with Scott McMahon, and that is where you'll have like this show online. It's instead of having a podcast series, it's going to be like a video series, because like I said, I made my career up here as a part-time actor in Portland, and I've been paid as an actor, very minimal, to be a spokesperson for other people's products, all the time. And I was like, well, what's the difference in me just being an actor that's promoting my own business? So, and it's not like a real estate show. It's just really walking around different parts of the Portland neighborhoods in exploring really interesting stories. I'm just sort of the host, and I get to interview and meet all these interesting people locally. But the end of it is the soft sale of like, well, if you enjoyed this episode and you think this isn't this neighborhood as charming as I thought it was, then contact me at my real estate information. So now I get to make like short little movies or a TV show that is promoting my real estate business. So that's sort of the whole concept. If films are an advertisement, what are you advertising? So now my films will be advertising a higher priced service, which is the real estate service. And so that's why I've had this hiatus. And so, and I plan, my initial feelings with the Film Trooper is like, I do have all these backup episodes I need to get out. You'll hopefully see in the next few weeks as they come out. But I definitely want to come back and do like short seasons of like a condensed topic. So it might be sort of sporadic. So I might come back and say, all right, welcome to the Film Tour podcast. And so for the next 4 weeks, we're going to do a 4-part series on something very specific. Like you're going to see a live like demonstration of how to call film distributors, if that's where you want to go. Or
ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
Or like talking to an agent, like how would you get an agent? How do you, as a writing agent, an acting agent, whatever, a director's agent, a director of photography agent, things like that. So it might be specific, but it'd be fun to do something like that. So with that said, as we sort of go into the tail end of this session of this episode, I definitely wanted to talk about, which is what the whole topic was, what did I learn from my hiatus from Film Trooper? I wanted to, the reason you're
Hold
on
on
this.
one second, Scott. Yeah. My daughters are going bananas. I don't know if it's getting on the line or not. One second. So I live in this crazy neighborhood, and apparently somebody's like got a drum set and they're shaking bells and walking around outside. And
that sounds like Portland.
Yeah, I mean, I think I told you I live next to a wizard, and there's like
what?
These,
a wizard?
Yeah. So my neighbor, he's got this kind of much bigger house next to me, this big lot, and he's like this I don't know what you call it, but it's like he calls himself a wizard, and he has like seances and rituals in his backyard, and it's all very like not scary or anything. He doesn't, but at the same time it's pretty weird, and he'll like do these chanting late at night.
Oh my
I always have to warn people, like, if you see them doing like some kind of weird seance with a magical circle, don't be alarmed. They're harmless.
My God, it sounds like Portland. Anyway,
Yeah.
No, by all means, that's hilarious. Well, I was just mentioning that because the title of the episode or this series, maybe part 1, but this is probably part 2 now. What I learned from my hiatus from Film Trooper. I wanted to, and have the reason you're on this episode is because you and I have been bantering back and forth because of our sessions in terms of the Accountability Academy, of what we're applying to, from these other industries and how to apply them to everything from our private practice to the film industry itself, or the films that we're working on. So I thought it would be fun to sort of explore some of that, if you're game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's everything that you've taught me. It was really weird because like Backyard Space Opera, I started it not like kind of like what you were saying. Like I didn't have a super end game in mind. I would just going with it for a bit, and then as I started my private practice, we talked about it, of how everything I've learned in Backyard Space Opera could be directly applied to building my private practice, which is called Beyond Behavior Therapy. And I just took the exact same playbook and applied it in that direction, and it's worked really well. And now I'm able to marry the two together and kind of make this kind of a super endeavor. And but it's all the same techniques of that you've just described with the sales funnel and all this stuff. And I've tweaked it in my own direction in different ways, but at the same time, I feel like it's all very at the base the same thing. That's been huge to me is to have it, because I've seen other people struggle. Like I work with a lot of people who have gotten licenses, and they've all had to get jobs essentially at like detox centers and addiction centers, which is where more of the money is in my field. And that, you know, because they're not able to do a private practice because it takes so much marketing and so much of the stuff that's beyond the training
Yeah.
of a therapist. But because I had you and I developed it through Backyard Space Opera, I was primed and ready to move into my practice, and it's been huge, and I it's great.
No, it's actually really fascinating you said that. It's like, you're right. There's not, as artists, you know, as filmmakers, or like you said in the practice that you've gone into the industry, it's that aspect of the business part, basic business marketing and I guess sales is not there. I mean, because that's a whole other skill set. That's why different companies have, like, here's our sales department, and believe me, in every industry that has salespeople, there's always like the true people that are doing the work, the sales enablers, people that are help, and all these people that have to do all the work. Look at salespeople like, why are they making all the commissions? Like, I'm doing all the work, you know?
Yeah.
It's just that because there's this sales training and there's this sales skill set that has to happen. You know, now that I'm in that world now a little bit more with real estate, and, you know, I'm looking at it like, well, how do I not be that sleazy sales real estate broker? You know, it's like, because I hate that. That's one of the reasons I hate, you know, real estate brokers, is because of the people that act that way. And like, how do you not do that for your clients and the people that you help out? So yeah, so now we can sort of apply all this stuff. And you're right, because you mentioned like what your experience was with Backyard Space Opera and applying that to the private practice. It's like, okay, this is applicable, like applicable. I can't even speak.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, it works. And actually it's funny because, you know, we could talk about entrepreneurship. Like, I think all of us know like one or two people growing up that just have made it very successful as a business person, you know, and whether or not they just always had that, they're always doing something. Sometimes they're not always the best students. Like, I look back, I go, some of the people that weren't the best students are amazing business people now. They're making tons of money.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's a whole. I could go on that for hours about education, because you know, that's my background, and yeah.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Then I look back at things like that. You know, my dad was an artist, and it was like, it's, you know, and I looked at another friend of mine. Like, he grew up, his whole world was like business and real estate. You know, so like, by the time he was out of high school into college, like, that was his bag. Like, that was his world. It was an easy transition into the world of like business. For an artist to like learn business, it's and not having that background like this, like, I'm one of the only members of my family to sort of venture out in any sort of thing that's entrepreneurial ever. So it's like, not like I have this extended outreach to other people. I'm like, you know, I'm hoping to break a mold a little bit in my family so that my daughter sees it, and maybe, you know, her kids or my grandkids see there's an opportunity here, because it's just that it didn't exist in my world. So all the stuff I was kind of learning in the last few years, and but I'm comforted to know that they say things like, sometimes with entrepreneurs or business people, is that it's not always sort of the first one that they venture into that they're successful. It's always like the third, fourth iteration of whatever they're trying that actually connects. I mean, Walt Disney was famous because he was fired at his job because he couldn't draw. They said he couldn't draw cartoons, and he probably couldn't. Maybe, I mean, whatever. But like, he lost his business. He actually went bankrupt with his first one, his first animation business, The Adventures of Alice. You know, where he created, you know, and then Oswald, he lost the rights to his Oswald the rabbit character. So by the time he made Mickey Mouse, and what we know of Disney, it was like, there's a lot of failures, you know, a lot of things that didn't quite work to finally make it work for him.
Yeah.
And, you know, somebody like I said, my friend Alex Ferrari of Indie Film Hustle, the word hustle is inbred in that guy. Like, from early on, like, some of the stuff that he would do as a young man in Miami and working as a filmmaker, but a lot of his entrepreneurial mindset, just the hustle that he did, it was just ingrained in him, which is why it's no surprise to me to see Indie Film Hustle blow up the way it has. For me, like, I look at it like Film Trooper was sort of like kind of like my first foray into all this stuff. So I feel like I've had modest success with the outreach that it's had, the reach that it's had, as well as the sale of the book, because it's a self-published book. It's not published by a publisher. And to be able to say it's, you know, I think the last I saw was almost like, you know, I think the book is sold almost like $20,000, in
Yeah,
worth of copies. Now, to step back and go, it's not like, that's over time. It's not like you can make a living off it, but the overall revenue and sales of that book, if I said, I wrote a book, I self-published it, and we made sales revenue about $20,000. People are like, well, that's damn pretty good,
Yeah.
Because actually, it made, the book made more money than my movie, right? I think people would be stoked if they're like, my movie, I made it for $5,000 and we made $20,000, man. The fact in the film world, if you break even, you're considered a success.
Yeah.
As long as you don't lose money, you're considered a success. And that's what's crazy about it. Like, if you make a profit, then whoa, man, you're kind of a rock star in the film business,
And yeah, I think I find it so fascinating, the film industry, and it's like I don't have any real desire to be like this traditional fee paid employee, even though I kind of am now, which is kind of weird. But it's so fascinating to me. Like, I loved your podcast about going to the independent film
the American
market.
film market, yeah, the American film market, yeah.
And it makes me like, I want to be one of those guys who goes and just buys movies and sells them overseas and makes deals. Like, that's where the money. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, but that's sort of like real estate. Really, it's to apply the different world. In the world of the American film market, the people that are buying and selling film, they're just brokering deals. And I love this story because this is actually sort of a friend of mine who was on, like you've heard before, Scott Kirkpatrick, who's actually in that field, in the business. He buys and sells films and brokers deals. And he kind of relayed this story to me. It was just like, this is sort of a real world situation where a producer / distribution company has a relationship with an international film buyer. And in this case, it would be like Japan. And they know that Japan always loves big monster films. And so the American producers distribution company had their art department create a poster of a big monster destroying a city. That was it. That was they don't have a script. They don't have a movie. They just have a relationship, and they brought it to the Japanese buyers, and the Japanese buyers said, that looks great. If you can make that film and deliver to us in X amount of months, we'll pay you $2 million for that. So everybody thinks like the movie is going to be made for $2 million, but that's not how money is made in this industry. The money is made because those distribution companies and producers will pocket $1.5 million, decide to make the film for only $500,000, and then so again, if you are someone who works in that industry as a screenwriter or a director, photographer, or an actor or director, you realize like, well, it's a $500,000 monster movie. You don't know that the deal was brokered for a lot more, and that the producers or in the company is pocketing $1.5 million. They don't make the film; they just brokered the deal. So now all these people are, killing themselves to make a $500,000 monster film in a very short time frame. They deliver the film, and maybe the Japanese buyers don't even care to look at the film. They just want to see that it exists and there's a cool poster. And they hand the $2 million over because that was part of the agreement. Lawyers signed it and all that kind of stuff, and it was a deal. So producers and distribution companies, that's just one deal. What if they did the same thing in the course of a year for 10 films like that? They're going to make several $1 million, where everybody else is just making a fee. Everybody's making a fee based off these small budget films. And that is how somebody like Harvey Weinstein made all their money.
Yeah. And it's I think I find it like tragic in that people who are the creatives and who love movies end up, they don't get the big return like the people who just are looking to maximize profits do. And I was reading the biography of the guy from Orion Pictures. I can't remember his name, but he was describing, he was the head of Orion Pictures, he was the head of Columbia Pictures, and he was talking about how he really wanted to greenlight movies that he believed in, and he wanted to kind of have a creative input. And he made Rocky, and he made, Silence of the Lambs, and all these fantastic movies. But all his companies went bankrupt, and he couldn't do it because he couldn't make enough money, even though he made all this fantastic art, and the junk stuff make so much more money.
And you're right. If you look at the library of films that Orion put out, from the 80s and 90s, it was amazing, amazing, and it went bankrupt.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, with that stuff learned, I guess lessons learned or applying that in the real estate world that I had to learn was you're brokering a deal. You're helping risk management for a very high value, probably the most expensive thing most people would be paying for in their lives ever, a home. So in all states, the reason the realtors are there is because like the state needs to have protection in place for licensed law, and they put a lot, like in your profession, you have to keep your license up because it's all designed to protect the public. So brokers are there to help protect the public from deals that could go awry if it's just the buyer and the seller. Unfortunately, in the world of real estate, everybody is an independent contractor, and everybody has their own way of running their own business. And even though they are beholden to certain license laws per state and general federal laws, you get like a small percentage of them that sometimes do things unethically, and they will lose their license. But what it does is taints the industry, and so the National Association of Realtors are a force that is supposed to put that stuff into place. And it's funny, you have a union for film producers, but you don't really have their organization is not like with the National Association of Realtors. Like if certain agents are doing things against the law unethically, they will be barred. They lose their license and unable to practice any real estate. And so there's sort of the accountability for that. It's interesting in the film industry, you don't have that. It's not like the Directors Guild or the Producers Guild is coming after certain producers for all these shenanigans or like unethical sort of deal making. They don't operate that way. It's really it's kind of interesting. I'm not too sure. What is it like your industry too? Do you have a high set of regulations on you guys? Don't you?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's pretty much like you were describing with the realtors. It's very regulated in terms of you have to. I mean, like I said, there are unethical behaviors going on, and then it's highly policed in a lot of ways, and they lose their license. And there is an association to help people, defend themselves appropriately. But there's no, like with the film industry, like it's winner take all kind of system. It's much more medical driven, like that field. So
yeah,
if that makes sense.
So the interesting thing when I learned about the real estate world is like it's been around for a long time. So there's a lot of been proven things that work or don't work, but there's also just a lot of noise. Like you got to just pick and choose the kind of real estate professional you're going to be, and there's something to the power of the follow up.
Yeah.
So we talked about it earlier, the sales funnel, about online there's a lead magnet that's created, something of interest or value that you're exchanging for an email that you're trying to build a lead. In the world of real estate, leads are when you go to open house, that realtor is hoping to meet people that are in need of buying a home or selling a home, and then making that contact and doing the follow up. A lot of realtors make their business off the concept of the referral industry. So I mean, their whole business is based off them doing a good job for a friend, and then that friend telling all their other friends that no, they did a good job for me, and then the referral. And so that is really the core for probably 75% of most realtors. Some of the more savvy realtors out there have a bigger real estate team. They're using internet marketing, or when you jump on sites like Zillow or Trulia, they are paying like a ton of money to those websites like Zillow and Trulia just to be able to advertise on that platform. So it's one of those things like they pay to play.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I have to kind of figure out all that stuff works out. But how could it be applied to the film industry? What's interesting, if filmmakers are listening and they're trying to get a movie made, or they're trying to get the right contacts in place, the right networking in place, Say they're trying to make a contact with distribution companies if they choose to go down that path. The reality is just making that first initial contact of just befriending certain people at all these different companies, and that you're not like some crazy person, and maybe you don't even have a film. Maybe you're just trying to figure out what they're looking for, and then and if you're a producer that can deliver them a film like that, if you built a relationship over time, and that's when I say over time, it's the equivalent of the follow-up. And that's one thing I learned about real estate. It's the power of the follow-up. I did an open house back in July, and I just kept in contact with this married couple, the young married couple, over time, just, every month or every other month, just check in with them. And then, but I try to give them a piece of value every time I talk to them, something that would be beneficial. Well, just because I never gave up, I finally had another meeting with them, and now, I'm helping them find a house. But that took how many months to make that happen? So I saw that in a lot of other cases too, it's the power of the follow-up. And that could be easily applied to any filmmaker out there who is working as a film producer. Is somebody understands the power of the follow-up. Maybe a follow-up with a certain star or a certain agent or a certain manager or a certain film company or whatever it might be. Don't take no for the first time as the answer unless it's like a really hard no. But one of those things, like, there's a way to keep following up, to keep checking in, that eventually, you're becoming top of mind. Or like if you made all these relationships with certain distribution companies, they're like, oh yeah. So how's the things going? How's that film you're working on? Well, we finally finished. We'd love to have you take a look at it. Well, we'd love to, because you're not coming out of the blue. You're like, I've taken the time to build up a relationship with you. So the follow-up I have with you, it's like, I think I have something of value that we can maybe work some deal out or whatever it is. So that's one thing I learned from the real estate industry that could be applied to the film industry. And then we talked about this in one of our sessions, because you have an interesting thing where you can't use testimonials from your patients because it's patient doctor sort of confidentiality. But there's different ways to follow up with certain people so they're top of mind.
Yeah.
Talk about your situation.
Well, and follow-up has been is huge for me too. And we've talked about how it's important for me to follow up, and I have these referral sources, and I have different ways that I follow up, and I'm constantly trying to find, like we've talked before, like I do have these limitations on certain ways, but then there's other ways to go to follow up with potential, not only referrals to give me direct clients, but also referrals of, like you said, like developing relationships that will blossom over time. And it's really interesting hearing you talk about, because I'm reminded of with Backyard Space Opera. I mean, I would meet people through the podcast, and I had relationships, and I still do, and I try to follow up with them when I can. But there's some that are like potentially very powerful relationships with, like, directors and producers and things.
Yeah.
And I don't, that's not my goal. I don't want to become a filmmaker in that way. I'm a therapist, and I've actually reached out to people who I know who do want to be filmmakers, and I've said things like, hey, I have these contacts and they're really great, but I don't have time to follow up because I have all these other follow-ups I have to do. Would you like to kind of be partnerships, and this could be for you too? And nobody's really taken me up on it. It's so interesting. And I've had one guy, Dakota Morgan, who's great young guy, and he's got that hustle, and he's been follow up on his own ways. And we did a thing together recently, but so many people don't seem to, like, I'm giving them in your lap. Here's a follow up to a director who's a studio director. Oh yeah, that'd be great. I'll do that. It's like, well, do it.
Yeah.
but so it's been fascinating to me, but I have so many I can't actually do it, and I've been struggling to pick and choose the right ones and how to do it, and that's been my struggle.
Yeah, it's well, actually, it's funny you said that. The struggle is, I think Warren Buffett had this quote, or people to quote him as saying, like, Warren Buffett, how did he become like the richest man in the world? Like, how did he do what he did? And he said, I just did the right things more often. It sounds so dumb, but it's and so like simple in a way. Like, do the right things more often. And it's interesting because when you and I get together, we're paring down the really trying to dissect and unpack really what's going on, so that there's that whole Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, meaning that 20% of everything that you do will have actually 80% of the results of whatever you're trying to do. So that means like 80% of your time only gives you 20% results back, like your return on investment. So if you get focused more on, really laser focus on what is that 20% that always gives you 80% return back, that is sort of the right thing. And Warren Buffett does more often that stuff than other people. And so for your situation, you're like, well, how do you do lead generation for a private practice in a sense? Like, how do you, and we talked about partnerships, people that will refer you, other professions that could prefer you where you are unable to do so because you can't violate sort of patient testimonials and things like that. So, you might be working with a hospital or something, and because you've taken the time to do follow-up with people at a hospital, and certain professionals in the hospital always know that you're around, and you have a specialty that you do with children with special needs and so on like that, and counseling, they're going to refer you over some other people because you've taken the time to follow up, stay on top of mind, and the difference is you've done more of the right things more often than if you were doing a blanket like shotgun approach on Google, AdWords, or something,
Yeah.
So the thing about real estate, it's the same way. It's like, there's a concept like you're supposed to just make sure that you're taking care. Everybody, all your friends and family know that this is what you do. Like, so please have them refer people to you. But then you're still kind of like, not everybody's always in the mood or in the ready to make to sell a house or buy a house. So if you spend 20% always going towards people that are always looking to buy or sell the house, there's things like that. They call them FSBOs in real estate. There's just people that sell their homes called for sale by owner because they don't want to pay a large fee to the realtor. They're like, I'll do it on my own.
Yeah.
And so, which is understandable. Why not? If you think that the fees or the commission is too high, commissions, by the way, we find out that it's all of it across the country is 100% negotiable. So there is no standard commission. So with that said, there's this thing that the realtors are a small group of them focus on trying to work with for sale by owners, meaning that try to hopefully get them to have them represent them so they can sell the house for them and then earn a commission that way. The thinking there is like, if realtors are always looking around like, who's the next? This is what I hate about realtors is they're always talking about deals, but this is the same thing in the film industry. If you meet certain producers, they're not filmmakers. They're just looking to make the next deal. They're the people selling the monster movie to Japan that have no script or have no movie made. They're the ones looking. The high they get is like, I got to make the deal. I got to make this $1 million deal. I got to make this $1.5 million deal. And in real estate, it's like, I got to make this deal. I got to sell this house. I got to make this. I'm just looking to close deals. They're not even thinking about helping the family. They're not even thinking about, all those types of things. They're just thinking about, closing a deal. And so I can't stand that kind of stuff. So I focused on just truly just helping people, the families. So my goal has to be look at like people who are selling their homes on their own, that if they truly want to sell their house on their own, how can I help them? And then the difference is if it's a way to, if it comes around where like it looks too big of a job for them to do, then I'm there because I haven't forced them or made them feel pressured in using an agent or shame them thinking that they really should use an agent or something like that. Because all these tactics that they have that I don't like, that there's another way to approach it. But the difference is doing the right things more often is instead of trying to find people that might be selling their home or buying a home, you go straight to the horse. I mean, you just go right to the well. It's like the well is like, here's somebody who says, I am selling my house and I'm doing it on my own.
Yeah.
It's like a sign that says, well, if you're doing your own, good luck to you. Let me see if we can help you. And if it gets to a point where you don't want to do anymore, I hope that I've earned your loyalty or referrals. Maybe because they might have a friend that wants to sell their house, but they don't want to do it on their own. So, but if this person says, you know what, I sold my house on my own, but this agent helped me out quite a bit, and he wasn't salesy, he never came off pressure. Let me refer you to that person. So what it is now, I'm playing the odds game. I'm playing the numbers game, saying this is, if I spend more time in this world helping those people, there's a better chance I'm gonna sell more houses than if I'm just sort of hoping and always looking and listening to see if anybody's in the market for selling. So that's the world that I learned, or what I've learned about the real estate industry. One of many, many things. But how can that be applied to the film industry? Is simply, again, knowing, like, if you're going to make a film and you want to get distribution, like a good distribution deal, is to do the follow-up with all these distribution companies and make the relationships to then find out, like, really what they want, and then deliver, like, so if you make a film, like, we were talking and you guys were looking for like an urban zombie film. I go, well, we actually made one. I think it'll probably fit the bill. Oh, great. So it's like, now it's like, it seems effortless. Like because you've taken the time to lay down the groundwork as opposed to making one and then shopping around and wasting all your time, wasting 80% of your time, only get 20% results, versus if you had a concentrated 20% of your efforts to the right type of partnerships, will get you to where you want to go. Stephanie Palmer, who's the founder and the writer of Good in the Room, and she has her site and her services helping screenwriters out. She talks about it. It's like, the reality is once you get in the room to pitch your story or your ideas, it's very rare that right there on the spot somebody says, I love it, let's make your movie, and here's all the money, Yeah. He goes, that initial meeting is just to try to get the next meeting.
Right. It's the beginning of the relationship.
Yes. So, and that's something that is constant through all industries, like your industry of the private practice, my industry. And then, like I said, we are seeing the film industry part of it. But we have chosen to take our creative needs, combine it into a field that actually commands more money on an independent level. For you, it's your private practice. For me, it's my real estate services. So now we can talk about, how do you bridge the gap between this creative need to make these films and then this world that's not actually in the film industry, but there's a through line. When we actually line them up, we're like, oh, that makes sense. This actually can work this way, especially if the concept is all films are an advertisement for something else. So how are you doing with Backyard Space Opera and your private practice and the book you wrote?
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's, for me, being I was a teacher for a long time, and I actually have always been involved. Loved movie production and things, especially sci-fi and fantasy. And my very first teaching job, I started a club to make cheesy monster movies. And when I started working at the special ed school for kids with mostly on autism spectrum, I did the summer program where I did this, and it was really popular. And what happened was, I see that a lot of the people who I work with, who I can help in a lot of broad ways, the thing that I love, this genre filmmaking and stories and stuff like that, it's a special kind of niche that we all share, and that has been my way to connect with them as a therapist, and is about this stuff, the movies and video games and those kinds of stuff. And now, so I've just kind of made it more official and made it to where I'm putting it out there, like, I do this too. I can teach you. This is a way to connect. This is a way to learn these certain kinds of skills. I've embedded therapeutic approaches into it, and it's made me stand out from other therapists who work with kids, because I have this specialized kind of approach that's about making sci-fi and fantasy movies. And it's not for everybody. It's not going to give me every kid, but it's giving the kids who I relate to the most and who I can help the most. And it's been this great connection, which I didn't even really plan originally.
Yeah.
And it's so then now, beyond just the marketing of my private practice, using the marketing techniques for Backyard Space Opera, I've kind of embracing the idea that I can put my creative energy into helping other people share their work. And that's what I found that I love the most is if I find somebody who they have a passionate idea, I can inspire them and help them and maybe do what I can to add to their projects. And that's been really how I felt fulfilled in my creative needness, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's something unique, but it definitely lines it up. Because I remember you and I were talking and you know, I remember seeing that like, well, how can you combine the two? Because you're already doing it. There's a passion behind both of them. And we discussed about what Film Trooper, you know, is becoming. And in that sense, it's that, you know, the podcast will exist and have some sort of semblance in trying to, they can move forward with like extreme value in short pockets of episodes moving forward. But how I apply what I learned from Film Trooper. So like, you know, writing the book was sort of an exploration of these discoveries. And then this second half of the journey of Film Trooper is sort of the application of all that knowledge. We talked about it again. Bruce Lee, knowing is not enough, you must apply. So it's an application of this knowledge. And, you know, I had written, you know, people were asking, well, when's you going to make the next film? When are you going to make the next film? Because I made The Cube. And then, you know, for those who follow Film Trooper, I had this exploration of application of this process, taking something from Pixar, where they have the, oh God, what do they call it?
The
Brain trust. Yes, brain trust. So it's sort of like they get together and they collectively hammer out the story, you know, as a group, but in an interesting, unique way. So we had Rob Edwards on. Let me double check my podcast real quick because I want to make sure I get what the episode it was. It was one of my favorites. It's Richard Gab. Sorry about it. Everybody's hanging in there with me. Where is it? Did it go? Maybe it was fast. Maybe after 100.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, look at me. Like, yes, Rob Edwards, episode 105. It's like what happens in a Pixar brain trust meeting, with Disney screenwriter Rob Edwards, and he explains what happens. And so I wanted to apply what he shared with us, and it got to the point where I got some other filmmaking podcasters together, and not only did I made it easy for them. I said, look, I wrote the next script for my next movie. So everybody's like, okay, cool. When's you going to make the next movie? Well, here it is, me making the next movie for you. But first, let's make sure the script is okay, you know? Because when I made The Cube, I was thinking like, cool, I did it, you know? You know, the story had a beginning, middle, and end. But I was thinking to myself, okay, if I can make the story even better, like really, really strong, then the next effort could be even better. So then I started to do that. I started making the genre film a more horror-based, you know, genre, as opposed to this weird genre-less movie I made with The Cube. So I wrote the script, and then I was trying to make it easy for everybody, and I had so much fun doing the audiobook for my book, and I'm running a podcast. I decided to do an audio presentation of my script. So people have table reads where they have actors come together and a narrator, and they all read it out loud so you can hear what the script sounds like. Well, I decided to do all the parts myself, but then add music and sound effects. So you can actually find that that whole episode back in number 112, which is What If Your Script Sucks and How to Fix It, Part 2.
I love that episode. I did one of my early podcasts was we talked about your script too. It was great.
So yeah, I remember that you had me on. Thank you so much. But what was fun about that was I got this reaction where people got some good scares out of it here and there, got creepy, but overall it left enough people sort of like, it's missing, like it still needs work. And you can think about this. How many films have we seen like we're just thumbing through Amazon or iTunes or Netflix, and you're watching it like, cool, I saw that movie, but it seems like they could have done this to it. You know, they could have fixed this or they could have done that. Like it's like some movies you watch are like, there's some things I could have done better. Well, imagine if I had taken, you know, the small amount of money I had to make the second film, and I made it the way that it sounds. And people were like, oh, it's cool. Scott made a second film. Yeah, it was okay, you know?
Yep.
And I was like, well, I didn't have to make the second film when I already saw and heard that it wasn't quite resonating, you know. So I was like, shoot. So I spent a lot of time going back to that script and hammering away. And I was like, that comes to the point where like, maybe this is not working. Like maybe this thing just is not happening. And, you know, there's another aspect to it, which is like, that's when I get to my dad passed away, and that gave me a different perspective. It was like, I got to get back to creating like a base sort of career, you know, because I have family and I have like this long-term plan in place. Because when I made The Cube, I was working a full-time job, and it was fun because I did it on the nights and weekends, and that sort of drove me. When that tenure ended, and I've been bouncing around like with acting, it's sort of like you never know when the work is coming in, and it's up and down. And I was only making so much off of Film Trooper; it wasn't supplementing sort of that full-time income, which is why I decided to get into real estate. Is like, let me make that sort of the full-time job, and then to get back to making the movies on the nights and weekends, which actually, because they're two different skill sets, I think I'd actually commit to it. Because like I think if I had, like, it's one of those things like you hear is that engineers, if you told them you have an unlimited budget and unlimited restrictions, you know, make this thing happen, they wouldn't know what to do. But engineers are more effective if you say, here's the limitations, here's the budget limitations and the you know, the restrictions of the project. And that seems to always come into play as something that people can work under, the constraints.
Absolutely. I actually have a buddy of mine who is an engineer, and we call him the engineer on our podcast. And whenever we need something, we're like, oh, this will be for the engineer. Because it's like he's told us, he's like, look, I'm not creative like you guys in the story aspects, but if you need something specific and you can tell me I need this, this, and this, I can do that for you.
Yeah.
So he's our go-to guy for that.
So it's funny. So one of the things so I've been building that up. So it's, but in order to promote the real estate business I mentioned, I have to use film content. And because I'm running my own business, I can get as creative as I want. It doesn't have to fit into this sort of pigeonhole, that's what's exciting about it. Like I haven't had I'm just planning right now. I'm doing like the storyboards and stuff for like all these episodes that I'm putting out, like, that I'm going to make and produce. But now that's getting exciting because like now that I understand what my job is as a real estate agent, I know that I can do a good job helping, you know, buyers and sellers of homes. But the fun part is like, well, how do you generate the interest in the lead generation, the prospects of the stuff that you're selling? And now that's the fun part. That's the movie making part. You know, that's the creative part. So that's how I'm applying it. But there's one aspect of Film Trooper that I really love doing, which is I created the Film Trooper Academy for young people, for aspiring young filmmakers. And those who follow me on Film Trooper know that on our YouTube channel, you know, we have a few episodes where I gotta
take a call real fast.
Sure.
Sorry. Hello. 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 Yeah. Are you coming home now? Okay, sounds good. Okay. You bet. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No. We'll wrap up here. We're about 10 minutes, like less than 10 minutes out. Like I said, this is gonna be a two-parter. So Thank you for hanging in there with me.
No, it's great.
Anyway, so I was mentioning one of the great things I loved about Film Troopers, like working with the Film Trooper Academy, the young people, and we have like. So one of the aspects of it's interesting about real estate is that they always see realtors like they suggest that they do something for the community, some sort of community outreach that they sponsor. That's why you see like realtors like sponsoring like softball games or some football game at the high school or something like that, you know, or they hold like the annual egg race or something in the neighborhood for Easter or something like that. Yeah. The difference is my community outreach will be these half-day film schools. Presented by Film Trooper, but it's actually presented by my real estate company or by me. So if people see that I have a video show that called Around the Neighborhood with Scott McMahon that promotes my real estate business, they know that it's part of the Film Trooper Academy. Like, how do you do this? How do you do your videos? So now I can extend that out to the community by saying, well, I'll teach you in a half day, for 4 hours. I'll teach you how a film school. And it'd be initially for the young people, but but I know that a lot of adults, want to take the course because I already have interest. So I've already accumulated interest because of what I did with the Film Trooper Academy, the kids. And now it's like I get to do that part, which I really love about the Film Trooper, is the Film Trooper Academy. But it just happens to be sponsored by the real estate, part of my career. So it's like, it's just because it's all in connection with each other. It's like, hello, my name is Scott McMahon. I'm the host of Around the Neighborhood TV. You've probably seen some of my stuff, as well as, the host of the Film Trooper podcast. And here we are with the Film Trooper Academy presenting the half-day film school. In 4 hours, we're going to learn everything you need to know about filmmaking, and we start now. So I have these exercises and things in the curriculum we talked about, working with kids in 4 hours, make it super fun. And then I can do the same thing, apply it to the adults. And the idea is that knowing that a lot of adults just want to know, how do you do this type of stuff if I'm going to advertise for my baking company or my hairdressing company? Like, they just want to know how to make videos and things like that. And so now I'm a partnership within the community of other business owners or people like that, but they know that I buy and sell houses. So it's like one of those things like, okay, now it's all kind of coming together. But the plan is in place. Now it's execution. Now we talked about the real hard thing, which is the daily execution. We talked about at the beginning of the show of just time management, time blocking. And you and I have discussed this in depth about what we're realistically capable of doing. I joke like I am no Alex Ferrari of Indie Film Festival. Like, I don't know where. I think he has a clone and the amount of stuff he does. And every time we get together, he just laughs about all this stuff. But the truth is, there's only so much effectiveness that we have and trying to get better, because again, you and I are trying to focus on that 20% that will give us 80% of the results back. So what have you noticed that have helped you focus on getting, not to say that you're an expert at it, but just what things have you changed or you've applied that have you seen some good results that try to always fight for having better time management?
I mean, there's a lot of, so I guess one of the great ones for me has been to create deadlines for myself. And like, because I have several advanced degrees, and people sometimes are like, how did you get all these degrees? Do you have to be smart? And they're like, well, no, like when you go to these programs, they give you deadlines. They're like, do this much reports and these many work by this deadline. It's like, great. And I'm really good at that. I can hit deadlines. When it's just me, I have a hard time doing that. So what I've done is been effective is like I create like right now I'm doing WonderCon, a table there, and that's pushed me to like I have to get all this stuff done before WonderCon, have it ready. And so like because I'm launching my new training program, my expanded training program, and I was like I have to have my office set, I have to have this materials ready, I have to have the new website up, and I'm like most of the way there. But I know it's like next week is a deadline, and I'm going to just crank it out and that's what helps me make sure I'm hitting these benchmarks the most is creating something to be a deadline for it.
Because it's real. Because like if you had I think deadlines, like especially if you're a self-employed or you're an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur. Because if you're on a job. Like if you get a job or if you're like on a film, like there's no messing around. Like here it is, here's the deadline, and then you're able to like laser focus and like just get the job done.
Yeah.
When you like we talked about that, the engineer that has a limited budget, limited scope, they can really do it. But they have unlimited budget, unlimited scope, then you're kind of like, where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I've been doing some of these 48-hour film projects, and the guys I work with, they're like. That's like most of their films have been these because it forces you to get it done, and it's great. I mean, but it's you're also doing not the same quality you could have done if you took like in the next film, this new project I'm working on with these guys. It's not a 48, and it's taking much longer, but at the same time, they're pushing me to be like, hey, remember we're doing this and this time. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Thank you for reminding.
Yeah, seriously. So, I think for me, like the big rigmarole was I didn't know really what my job was of the last few months. Like again, I think I was learning a new profession, so I felt a little lost and kind of get my head wrapped around how it works. But now it's come into laser focus, and then with the laser focus, it's just a plan, and then it's simplifying it. And simplifying it to a way that feels like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm going to have the most energy. Because honestly, I think like if I go back to the script that I wrote, the Ada script that I was working on, that was supposed to be my second film, I had fun doing it, but I feel like in some ways that I was trying to write it to, like I wasn't really writing for myself anymore. I was trying to write it to a genre and write it to what I thought is what needs to happen next, as opposed to just being like blissfully just going, this is what feels right now. Like I need to write this one right now, and then let the passion sort of roll through it, and let myself overcome in the world of that zone, and then put a deadline to it, and then I can meet it. It felt I don't know that explained it or anything like that, but I felt like I was
because you're trying to like write to a winning formula, something you thought would be successful, as opposed to just expressing the thing you wanted to express.
And
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and it wasn't working. So I was like, and then like with the real estate now, it's like I've been messing around with what's happened in the last few months. Is like what you don't see, what nobody hears about, is like I've been testing and trying all these different techniques that would work in the world of real estate to see what will work with me. Because one of the things they really hammer into us is simply like, if you do open houses, like you really have to analyze the method and how you do your open houses. In the end of the day, are you getting any business from it? If you're not, then stop doing open houses.
Yeah, that's huge. That was a big lesson to me too. I thank you for that one, because I was doing things and like, why am I doing this? This is not helping.
Yeah. They say like once you have some sort of success, like once you, in terms of revenue, like once you figure out I got a deal or I got clients from this way, what was that way? Analyze it, stop, and really think about where that came in. And then they said, then you're supposed to put your effort behind that. Because if that worked for you once or twice, then you need to put more effort and concentration on advertising or developing a system to make that better, as opposed to doing something that everybody else tells you to do, that in terms of what you think conventional wisdom tells you to do. But if you look at your own true returns aren't working, then you've got to move on, And I think that was a lot of what I was talking about with Film Trooper. I would start some projects within Film Trooper and then stop, because I was like, the return's not happening. It's just not happening. Yeah. So you got to be able to cut loose.
Well, and I think I don't know how you felt this way, but like a lot of my projects that I started back at Space Opera is like I could have seen them through, and I a lot of them I am going to pick back up in certain ways, but at the same time, like that's going to be 60% of my time that I can allocate toward these fun kind of projects, and it's like, is that really the return that I want? And I had to decide it's not where I want to go. Like you said with Ada, it felt like I'm just trying to put it in to make a formula, as opposed to something I really wanted to do.
Yeah. Like it's run its course. Like I just couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
But not to say like I have a plan for that. That needs to be invigorated by some other eyes on it, and I know the eyes, and I want to have them look at it. So it's one of those things. Like sometimes you take like an old idea that you're working on, maybe an old script you're working on, it's just not working, and you bring it to light to some new person that takes a look at it, and then all of a sudden it invigorates it. Like it just seems to connect. Yeah.
And that's, let me see what you think, because that's actually something I've been toying with, the idea of like, I have all these things and I like have these scripts, and recently somebody's like, I really want to do a project with you, and I'm a novice and I want to do it. And I'm like, that's cool, but I don't have any time to like develop things beyond like this. And they're like, well, let me have a script and I'll read it and I will take the legwork, and and I'll just kind of be the producer essentially. Mm-hmm. And I said, great. And so I gave them the script, and it's like, I don't feel like it's my thing anymore. Now they can, and if nothing's happening, I'm just kind of letting them decide the pace. And it's made me feel good that the project is moving forward, but at the same time, I'm not in charge of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And you hear that all the time. I think like the famous what was it? Lawrence Kasdan, the writer director.
Yeah.
He had the script for The Bodyguard on his shelf for, I don't know, like almost like 15 years before Kevin Costner brushed it off and said, "Let's rework this." And they made the movie The Bodyguard. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time. So even if it happens to the big people, the big guys in the Hollywood system, it definitely could happen to this independents. So,
Yeah.
but the difference is, for us independents, you and I are like, we have families, we have a livelihood, we want to, and we're working outside the system. So we have to get our home base taken care of. So if
that's huge. I want to emphasize that's you hit it right there.
Okay. So the takeaway was like, let's just focus on that. Because I remember when we got together, the accountability weekly meetings were simply, let's go ahead and, focus on your film, get you in the film festival, get your podcast up and running. And then we realized there's something deeper going on. We're just like, okay, you got to get your private practice up and running. But how are you going to apply all this stuff? And so we then focused on like, let's take care of home base first. And then I shared with you what I was going through, which is like, I'm going to take care of my home base first and then come back to Film Trooper. And the goal was always to use Film Trooper, the podcast, as a place to share these experiences so people can learn from, I honestly was supposed to be learn from all my follies, like all my mess ups, so that I would, and moving forward. But yeah, it's really important because I mean, a lot of filmmakers that out there that are they just want to make their films. That's all they would love to do, only that. But sometimes we need to find some sort of source of stability or home base. It might be your full-time job or whatever your part-time job you're putting together, and use that as a source of inspiration to help propel your film projects, moving forward. Like I said, you found sort of a bliss in helping people because you already do it in a profession with your licensed career. And now you're like, well, I'm applying it to the filmmaking world, and I think I can bridge those two things together and connect them. And for me, I enjoy just creating stuff, but I want to be able to make sure what I'm creating leads to a through line that has a greater chance. Again, Warren Buffett's do the right things more often. I'm hoping that the right things is like the industry I'm in allows for a greater potential of revenue stream in terms of my home base than where I was before. And so that's, I guess, the lessons learned.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's been, everything we've talked about has been life-changing for me. And I'm hoping other people can be inspired to know that it's, I talk about it on my podcast all the time. It's like, you don't have to have it all or nothing. You can have a great career one way and then have your creative expression and merge it together if you can, or don't, or find what works for you. Because, going, to Hollywood and to try to be in that system, it's tough. And, I talk to people all the time who are in it. I'm not in it, but I kind of, you talk to them just casually.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle. And I'm like, it's not what I would want. But you could still have, today the technology exists, like your book describes. You can create something great and share without the system. You don't have to dig and push into that studio system if you don't want to.
Yeah, I agreed. I think it's the perfect way to wrap up this special 2-part series. What we learned, or what I learned from my hiatus from Film Trooper, and I hope that people got a lot of value out of this, and also sort of a connection, because I think when we're candid this way and we're not afraid to share, like, hey, I'm not crushing it. Like, I'm not. Obviously the films I'm making aren't like changing the world, but that doesn't stop me from wanting to make more film content. It's just that I have to change my plan a little bit. And if it means that I have to learn a new profession to do so, if there's a way to apply the two worlds together to move forward, then why not? And it's great to have you on because it's sharing your journey as well, so that I'm sure other people that are listening are maybe in the same boat or are at a crossroads where they're thinking like, okay, I don't feel alone, like this makes sense to me, and you just keep on keeping on, I guess.
Exactly, and I that's been the best thing for me in doing my work is I really try to make a message in my podcast of we're all in this together and we all want to share and help each other. It's not a winner take all. It's not a zero sum game. It's we're all trying to support each other, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for spending this much time with me. I know 2 hours, and I think your dogs are ready to meet the wizard.
I apologize for my
No.
dogs. They're just they have their own agendas, unfortunately.
It's the wizard, my friend. It's the wizard.
Film Trooper, empowering filmmaking entrepreneurs.